I think we can start now. So yes, the title of my presentation today is Fair Tech Industry, because of course I will be focused on Fairphone, but I will try also to speak about the other challenges behind the mobile industry. Not only created for Fairphone, but also for all the digital industry or all the electronic industry. I will try to do, to shorten a bit the presentation, to do a bit more than 1 hour, just to have time, the second hour, to discuss if you have questions, etc. Because I think that's also the value of having this kind of lessons for you. And I can be also interested in having your questions. Before starting and before presenting myself, I just wanted to ask you how many of you guys know Fairphone? Have you heard about that or not? I will just look at my screen to see some. So Andrea say yes. Margot, okay. So some of you guys, good. Yes, of course. Good. Okay. So I think I will go behind the scene about what you know. So who am I? So my name is Agnès Crepet. What I am doing at Fairphone, I'm mostly focused on the technical aspects. So I'm the head of IT. So IT means more or less all the non-exotic stuff that you have to do in a company, involving some digital technology, like having a tool to manage your stock, having a tool to manage your financial system, these kind of non-exotic things. I won't speak about that today. I will be more focused on my second team, because I'm leading a second team at Fairphone, the software longevity team, which is a team dedicated to fighting software obsolescence. Because as you may know, at least for some of you guys, we are focusing on making the mobile devices last longer. Not only, but one of the key areas that we are focusing on is to make sure that you can use your phone 5, 6, or 7 years. And to do that, that's a matter of making sure the hardware is okay. So the choice that we have made is to have a modular phone. But that's also a challenge from a software perspective. It's not only hardware, but also software. So my team is full of engineers focusing on how we can make Android upgrades on a super old phone. So to have the last security patches and an up-to-date version of the operating systems running on your phone. So that's what I'm doing at Fairphone. I've been working here since almost 4 years. I moved to Amsterdam because that's an Amsterdam-based company, but I'm back to France since a few months. So I'm a remote worker. I'm used to go to Amsterdam every month to see my team. Beside that, I'm still in a French company called Ninja Squad, quite focused on open sourcing. So that's a team of few developers, and we are focusing on developing software for different categories of companies, but mostly in France. And the main values of Ninja Squads are open sourcing, flat management, etc. And besides those professional activities, I'm quite involved also in some tech activist communities. So I co-founded in France a conference called Mixit, which is held in Lyon. It is a conference mostly dedicated to tech and ethics, and that's the edition number 10 in May, in 3 weeks. So we have a bit less than 100 speakers every year, and we speak about ethical digital industry, etc. I'm in the board of Duchesse France, a collective who is focused on how we can improve the visibility of women in tech. And I co-founded also an alternative media in my city next to Lyon, Saint-Étienne, called Le Numéro Zéro. And that's quite similar to other alternative media like Paris Lutte for Paris or Rébellion in Lyon. And the commonalities between those media, so Paris Lutte, Le Numéro Zéro, Rébellion, is to be web-based and also to be participative. So everybody could write an article. Of course, we have some moderation, but the idea is really to have a balance between the mass media, mostly owned in France by big corporates, right? And the voices of the people, more or less, the citizens. So that's me. About what I've done and how I ended up at Fairphone. So I started when I finished my studies. So I finished my studies in an engineering school in France. And I started in a super corporate world. So I worked for Tessie, which is a company doing a lot of banking systems. And then I worked for SQLE, which is a company focusing on developing software for any kind of other companies. And then I worked 7 years for Boiron, which is an homeopathic laboratory. And then I did a break during 1 year. I traveled with my boyfriend during 1 year all around the world to meet all the developers because both of us are developers. And I think this break helped me to, when I was back to focus on all the stuff, more ethically focused, I would say. And we launched our own company called Ninja Squad. I was speaking about that just before. I had also a job position in an engineering school, the same that I've done when I was young. And I was a computer science teacher, and I worked also on the pedagogy, how we can improve the format of the lessons, etc. And then, as I said, I joined Fairphone 4 years ago as the head of software longevity and IT. Speaking about Fairphone, so it all started in 2010. And it didn't start as a new startup to be a unicorn at one point, not at all. It was not at all a startup. It was more a tech activist community between the RDC, the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Amsterdam. So the blonde hair people that you see in the picture are from Amsterdam, and the other ones are from Congo. And I really want to insist to highlight that it's not a business launched only in the Netherlands. That's also a matter of, it was also a matter of involving the people in Congo. I will explain to you why. Why? Because everything started as an awareness campaign on conflict minerals. So as you may know, in a mobile, you have a lot of cobalt, a lot of tin, a lot of tungsten, a lot of gold, etc. And some of those minerals are quite involved in some, or could generate some conflicts in Africa, and especially in Central Africa. And in 2010, a lot of movements all around the world raised those kind of issues, and especially in Congo, because in Congo you have a lot of cobalt exploitation. And everything started like that, just some awareness campaign, a lot of people claiming that we should stop using those minerals, etc. And it was not at all a business. After a few years, almost 3 years. So those 3 years were dedicated on going to Congo, calling some journalists, making a lot of media campaign about this kind of issues behind the Congo exploitation. And at one point, those people decided to do something else because they had the feeling that it was good to do those kind of campaigns, but they had the feeling that they reached a kind of limits. in terms of impact, and they were like, okay, if we want to stop using conflict minerals, if we want to use conflict-free minerals, if we want to improve, to increase the number of conflict-free minerals sourcing, we need to be in the business. So we need to be actually a company who is using this kind of conflict-free minerals. So why I'm speaking about conflict-free? Because as you understand with the previous slides, Fairphone started like that as an awareness campaign about conflict minerals. So behind this project, where you had some people from the Netherlands, you have also an incubator called the WAR Foundation. This castle is that's a bit funny, but that's the real place where the war is held in Amsterdam. That's in the Red District, really in the center of Amsterdam. So that's a big incubator, and they have been working in Amsterdam for the last 30 years almost. So that's a super old incubator. And when you see that their tagline is making technology and society more open, fair, and inclusive. So we are far away from the French tech, as you see. That's really focusing on ethical techs. So they helped some other companies like Fairphone. So meaning actually bringing money or helping them to find some small investors at the beginning, etc. Another tagline about the war is, you can see that on their walls, technology is not neutral, etc. So it gives you a kind of perspective about what they are doing. And thanks to the war and some budget that they have found, some grants that they have found for Fairphone, they launched Fairphone launched its first crowdfunding campaign. So in 2013, a social enterprise was born. The mission of this company was, since the day one, to change the electronic industry, not to build a super fantastic Fairphone, but really to change the industry and to use the fact that we are manufacturing a phone as a good excuse or a good example to see that it is doable, because we want to change this electronic industry from the inside out. So everything started as a crowdfunding campaign, as I said, and it was quite a successful campaign. It was one of the most successful in Europe for the last 10 years. And they did it, I was not part of the company at that time, but they did it completely independently without using a cross-funding platform like KissKissBankBank or Indiegogo. They use it on a DIY mode completely themselves. They build the website themselves, etc. And it was successful because almost at the end of the crowdfunding campaign, almost 50,000 of people subscribed for this campaign. And it's a bit crazy because if you think about it, it's more than 50K phones sold by a company which was quite new and which didn't build a phone before. So it was quite crazy, a bit scaring for the founders because they didn't make a phone before. So it was a bit overwhelming. The founder, called Bas Panabel, had 2 burnouts in 2 years because for him it was a bit crazy. They didn't have any engineers at that time, but they managed to launch their first phone, the Fairphone 1, in 2013, at the end of 2013. And the mission was still focusing on improving the tech industry, the electronic industry. So the mission is, by establishing a market for ethical electronics, we really want to motivate the industry to act more responsibly. And I will explain to you what we call responsible digital industry. So as I said, we launched Fairphone 1 in 2013. Almost 50K phones were sold. And back to the time, we had only, if I say that, some conflict-free minerals integrated in the supply chain, the tungsten and the tin, and we had a removable battery. It was the first angle that Fairphone has chosen to be in the industry, to change it from the inside out. And then 2 years after, Fairphone 2 was launched. And Fairphone 2 is actually a phone which is still active. We still have some active users. I will explain to you what we are doing on this phone, what we did recently on this phone. My team, part of my team is quite focused on Fairphone 2 right now, because as I said, I'm responsible of the software longevity. So software longevity means that we need to run some OS operating system on all phones. And then we launched Fairphone 3 with a variant Fairphone 3 Plus, but in 2019 and 2020, that's the same phone with just an improvement on the camera. And then Fairphone 4 in 2021. And for each stage, I would say, we try to integrate more fair minerals, more conflict-free minerals. From Fairphone 2, we integrated the modularity to increase the lifespan of the phones, etc. I will explain to you that later. And why we did choose the phone, the smartphone, because if you look at the greenhouse emissions, even if some people say, yeah, it's a bit weird to be focused only on the green gas emission, which is true. I do prefer personally the MIPS measure. I'm not sure if you have heard about it. This is a measure pushed by a German institute called the Wuppertal Institute. And MIPS means material input per service design. And it measures the quantity of resources needed for one product. So for example, for one smartphone of 1 gram, which is not realistic, but let's say for one smartphone with a certain weight, you need 1,200 more in terms of resources to build this phone. And for a chipset, so the chipset is a small brain, the small processor of your mobile, you need 16K extra. You have to multiply the weight of the phone per 16K to have an idea about the quantity of resources that you need. And resources means abiotic resources, so minerals, for example, pure water, etc. Not only the footprint measure. So I do like this measure better than the carbon footprint, etc. But I mean, you will see a lot of reports from Green IT, from the ADEME, etc. in France, mentioning that actually, if we look at only the greenhouse gas emission, 84% of those green gas emissions are related to the devices production. And on the other hand, the usage of the phone, so meaning the network, the data connection, the hosting of the data center, is only, if I can say that, responsible of 16% of those green gas emissions. So it's worth trying to be focused on the production of the devices. And one of the most known devices is, of course, a smartphone. So let's look at our smartphone, what you have in the pocket. So you have to know that 1.5 billion phones are sold every year, and it's not new. This number is more or less the same since 2016-17, so that's huge. And the average usage of a phone is between 2 and 3 years, I would say, except for perhaps the Apple, which lasts a bit longer. But yeah, in the Android ecosystem, it's quite short, so between 2 and 3 years. And less than 20% are recycled, so that's a bit shameful. I will come back on that later. So all those kind of numbers results on a huge amount of e-waste, the fastest growing stream of waste on the planet, because that's more than 50 million of tons per year. And you can imagine that this kind of e-wastes are not in our country, or are not in our Western countries, but more in the South, and especially in Africa, also in Asia. So what I will try to explain to you when I will present to you what we are doing at Fairphone is I will use the framework, the scope of the life cycle of the phone. So I will start with the extraction. I will speak about the assembly, and then the usage of the phone, to end up with the disposal. So we'll speak about the main step of the life cycle of the phone. So to start with the extraction, so as I said, you have a lot of minerals involved in a phone because a phone is complex. A smartphone is a complex product with more than 200 components in it. And let's say 50 minerals, between 50 and 60 minerals. And all those minerals, because I was mentioning the cobalt, the tungsten, the tin, etc., but all those minerals are also present in what we call the green tech industry. So I'm not against the electric cars, etc., but you have to know that all those solutions are relying on the same minerals. You need 60 kilograms of raw materials for a single smartphone. And this is why we say that this extracting industry is one of the most polluting one. So the pictures that you see here are from the DRC. And the picture on the top, that's not a nice lagoon where you can swim, that's just some acid needed for the extraction of the copper, because that's a copper mine here. And that's a picture that we took a few years ago, and it didn't change at all. It's still the same situation right now. When you go next to this mine, and that's the same situation for all the mines, by the way, you see those kind of big trucks full of acid, and those big areas which are needed to extract this kind of coppers, what we call the LSM, large scale mining. So the large scale mining are something big in Africa, but also the artisanal scale mining are also something big, because you have a lot of black market there, and you have a lot of families with kids who are relying on this business to live. And the thing is, on those kind of artisanal and small scale mining, you have a lot of people working under dangerous conditions, so without the right equipment, etc. And the tunnels are super dangerous because they can fall away. You have also one of the big issues quite known in the Western countries now. This is a child labor. So you have more than in DRC, you have more than 40K kids working as miners, and mostly for cobalt. So 40K kids among 255K miners. As I said, we have also a lot of conflicts, minerals involved in the supply chain, as I said before. And if you want to know more about the mining industry, for the French speakers, my take is to read this report from an association led by Aurore Stéphan, who is a mining geologist engineer. And she's super good. This person is quite good, and she worked as crazy on doing the reports to explain and raised all the issues about this mining sector. So what we do at Fairphone right now on our last fund, we are focusing on 40 materials. So that's not 50, you know. Why it's not the full amount of the minerals in the fund? Because it takes a lot of time to have a clean way of sourcing the minerals. So for the cobalt, it took us, for example, 3 years to have a good supply chain, a fair supply chain to source fair cobalt. So it takes a lot of time. We are transparent on explaining where we are on the fair supply chain, etc. But right now, on each materials, we have a program, and we try to improve the sourcing of this these minerals. We are not only focusing on the urban mining, so meaning extracting the mineral from the earth, but we are also focusing on the recycling supply chain, because of course, what we call the urban mining, because of course it makes sense to try to improve this supply chain also. Why? Because if you can recover some minerals from the e-wastes, that makes sense, right? Avoiding to extract more and more minerals from the earth. But to do that, you have to know that one of the first projects that we have done to start Fairphone is to try to decomplexify the supply chain, because of course, if you dismantle your phone, you will see some component, you will see the battery, you will see the screen, etc. But to understand where the screen comes from and where one of the components of the camera comes from, you have to uncover the full supply chain. And if you want to have impact on this supply chain, you need to have impact on each step of the supply chain. So you have to convince the miners in DRC, for example, to work with this trader in Malaysia, etc., etc., etc. So at each step, you have to be present, which is quite a challenge. So yeah, here in this slide, you see all the stages to understand the supply chain. So the mine, the traders, the smelters and the refiners, the component manufacturers, and of course the final assembly manufacturers. But if you want to source fair cobalt, you need to be at every stage. So you need to convince the trader here, you need to convince the smelters to use the fair cobalt that you managed to source in DRC, for example. So that's something big, but we want to do that, and we want to open source also all this work to convince the other manufacturers to do the same. So if you go on the website of Fairphone, you will see the mapping of our minerals. So you can download actually all the information concerning the suppliers that we have. So you can click on one minerals and you can see the journey of this mineral across all the world. And you can also download all the reports for each device. So you can say, okay, I want to launch my old cable company, and I want to use potentially some nylon fair sourcing. You can download this report and you can review the list to see if you can find a supplier who can source for you some fair nylon. So I was focusing on the extraction, right? So what kind of minerals you have in a phone, and what we are doing at Fairphone to manage to source those minerals in a different way. So avoiding to finance some conflicts, avoiding to have kids working on the extraction, trying to improve the working condition of the people behind it. So we have, for example, a lot of fair trade minerals, but fair trade for me is a bit that's a bit restrictive to speak only about fair trade, because everything is linked together. So if you do only fair trade, that means that potentially you still finance some conflict minerals. So for us, fair minerals are really covering different kind of sectors. So good working condition, child-free, and conflict-free. So I spoke about the extraction. So now what about the production? So as the assembly line, I think perhaps not, but it was quite covered 10 years ago in Europe. Some media, big mass media like Libération, etc., published some articles about that. They spoke about Foxconn. So Foxconn is one of the biggest company in China. 1.3 million of employees, so that's huge. But why we have heard about them a bit more than 10 years ago, this is because of suicide campaigns. So some employees commit some suicides because they were raising all the issues concerning the working condition in those factories. When I say those factories, it's not only one factory. Foxconn is huge. They have literally some cities for them with a lot of factories. So they are known for bad working condition, but also they are known for hiring some young adults, let's say teenager. And one of the last article, the picture on the right, that's some issues that were raised for one of the last iPhone. to make sure that they will reach the deadline for the launch of one of the last iPhone. They onboarded a lot of teenagers to work on the assembly line. So that's the situation in China. When I say China, this is because a large part of the business of the assembly lines is done in China. If you want to know more, and for the people, I think this book is translated in English, by the way, but for the French people here, you can read this book. This is a super small one written by someone who worked at Foxconn. This is called La machine est ton seigneur et ton maître, and this is yeah, a huge report on how it is to work there, how the company is pushing people to work as crazy, etc. So what we do at Fairphone, so first of all, we don't want to replace the voices of the workers. So when we work with a factory, part of the RFQ is to be present in the factory. So we have Chinese Fairphone employees in the factory checking the working conditions, but especially defining with them what we can call good working condition, because we don't want to be to accelerate the colonization of the digital industry. We really want to work with the people in the assembly line to avoid to have only our Western point of view. Because when you speak with them, you will see that immediately that one of the main things is the money, the salary. From our Western countries, we would perhaps say that, oh yeah, but they work perhaps too much, they should work less, etc. Yeah, but the reality is they don't want to work a lot. They worked a lot because the salary is shit. So that's perhaps a bit obvious, but one of the main points what we try to do is really to work with them on defining those conditions. And one key point is to have living wages to improve the quality of their life. Living wages is not the minimal wages, but in essence, the base is the needed wage to cover the basic needs of your life and to have what we call a decent living for you and your family. So it covers the food, the utilities, the education, the clothing, the housing, transportation, saving, healthcare, etc. And as it is mentioned in this slide, unfortunately, often legal minimum wages are not living wages. So in China, now you have almost all the companies who are checking the box of minimum wages, which is an improvement, but that's not enough because low wages are, even if they are the minimum wages are still low, and low wages are a major issue in this industry. A production line worker in China needs about double the salary she or he normally earns for a normal week. So what we try to do in 2020, since 2019 for Fairphone 3, this is where we started to do that, is really to work with them on how we can improve the salary, literally the salaries. So we had a lot of negotiation with the factory, etc., management. And Fairphone is not, because when we work with a factory, we are not the only client of this factory. You have plenty of other manufacturers, electronic manufacturers. And what you have to know is if all customers of the factory would pay their share, all the workers would be able to have this living wage. So yeah, some kind of example for Fairphone 3, for a big amount of people in the factory, almost all the full-time employees, we gave them a bonus of a bit more 1,000 euros. And just for you to keep in mind, 1,000 euros mean 1,050 euros means more or less 4.5 times the monthly minimum wage. So that brings them almost to the living wage that I was speaking just before. And what's does this amount represent in terms of cost for us, in terms of cost breakdown for the fund? It's less than $2 per device. So what does it mean? It means that if you want to pay a living wage, right? So a decent wage for you workers in China, you just, if I may, you just have to pay less than $2 per fund to do that. So I have often the question from journalists like, yeah, but why you are mentioning it, right? I mean, that's a bit, you should not say that because it decreases a bit the ambition of the project. And that's exactly the opposite. That's the other way around. We want to say that's nothing, just to push the other manufacturers to do the same. Of course, that's nothing. That's nothing. That's not a lot. Think about if you have an iPhone in your pocket, think about that. Because the price of an iPhone is now almost 1K. And we want to do it the other way around to be open on that, just to push the other corporates to do the same. Okay, so I was speaking about the extraction. I was speaking about the production, the assembly of the fund, and now I will speak about the usage. And for the usage, one of the goals that we want to reach is to increase the lifespan of the fund. So we work on longevity. And for us, if I make it simple, the longevity is a matter of, increasing the reparability of the fund. So modularity could help because as you see in the picture, you can easily dismantle the fund without a lot of technical knowledge. In 15 minutes, that's done. My old aunt in Haute-Loire in France, who is actually 83 years old, she can do it. That's the thing, right? You don't have to be an expert to do it. And modularity, I will explain that just after, but modularity could help the reparability. And you have also long-term software support, and I will explain that to you also. So let's start with the modularity. So all the Fairphone are modular phones. So they consist of different pieces, so you can easily open the phone, change the screen, etc. If the charger module is broken, you can change it, etc. And thanks to the French government, I mean, Cocorico, we can say that the French government was not that bad, the good student, to apply this kind of directive from the European Commission to fight the e-waste, but the waste in general. They rolled out this index recently. It was beginning of 2021 to show to the end users, to the consumers, if the device that you want to buy is reparable or not. So this index gives you an idea about that. So Fairphone is not the only phone with a good index of reparability. That's from 0 to 10. You have also the brand name of Atesi, which is not that bad. I'm not sure if I mentioned that in this slide, but you have also the cross call, which is not that bad, etc. And if you look at some older phones, even the iPhone, the index is not that good. And my take would be, if you have to buy another phone in the next year, would be great to check this index, because it's a good measure to see if you will be able to keep your phone for 5, 6, or 7 years. And this score is assigned so far still by ourselves, but soon it will be done by a third party. I hope so. This is what we are pushing for. And this score is assigned on is built on a list of criteria. This list of criteria was done by the Ministry of Ecological Transition, and that's more or less at the end. The final rate is an average of all those criteria, and that's based on some criteria like the availability of the spare parts. Is it possible to still have some screen after 6 years? The price of the spare parts, if you can easily disassemble the phone, if you have the documentation, the access of the inside of your phone, the tools, etc. Yeah, so just small information about that and why we are aiming for having a long-lasting phone, because that's a LCA, a life cycle assessment that we have done recently for Fairphone 3, but this week we are supposed to publish the life cycle assessment, by the way, for Fairphone 4. So my take is for you to look at it. And if you look at this life cycle assessment that we have done, it's not done by us, by the way, but by a third party, an independent third party, a Germanic institute called the Fraunhofer Institute. And yeah, you can see that if you keep your phone 7 years, you reduce by 40% the CO2 emissions. So that's worth trying to keep your phone longer. So I spoke about the usage, I spoke about the modularity, so the hardware modularity. So now, what can we say about software? So first of all, why we need to focus on software, how to fight planned obsolescence. So why we need to be focused on software also, because a study by the European Commission estimates that 20% of users change their smartphone because of lack of software support. So for example, if you are using apps like TikTok, Snapchat, etc., they are known to be compatible with only 2, 3, 4 versions of Android. What does it mean? It means that if you, let's say that you want to, you can think that you are in a sustainable approach and you buy a second-hand phone on that market. That's let's say old, not that old Samsung, so an Android phone. And let's say that this phone is 2 years old, and you think that you can keep your phone 3, 4, or 5 additional years. But for some Android phones, you have to know that potentially the software support could end 6 months or 1 year after you buy your phone on a reseller. And why it is important to have software support? Because those apps that I was mentioning just before, TikTok, Snapchat, etc., could stop working once the Android version that you have is not maintained anymore by Google. And also the same for the banking apps, right? Now you have more and more constraints, security constraints to use the e-commerce, the e-solutions from your bank to do some transaction, etc. So you have to use the phone, etc., to have a code to secure your transaction. But to do that, you need an app, and this app will stop running on your phone if Android is not secure. So if you have an old Android running on your phone, potentially soon your bank app will not work anymore. So that's key to still have an updated version of Android running on your phone. That's the point. And to do that, how we can do that? It's difficult to do a software update, an Android upgrade on the Android, in the Android ecosystem. For iPhone, it's a bit different because iPhone, Apple is known to have control, ownership on both the hardware and the software. So that's good, because when they do an upgrade, and if it requires some firmware material update, they can do it. For Android, it's not the same. For Android, you have the OS, the operating system, done by Google, and you have some pieces of software, what we call the firmware, done by other parties, like the chipset vendor. One of the chipset vendor, quite famous, is Qualcomm, or another one is MediaTek. And potentially speaking, those chipset vendor will stop doing the updates of their software after a certain period of time. So for example, for Fairphone 2, we have bought a certain chipset, right? an old chipset now, but at that time it wasn't that old. And in 2016, if I'm not wrong, in 2016, Qualcomm tell to us, hey, this chipset, the one that you integrated in Fairphone 2, that's the end of life of this chipset. We won't provide some software updates on the chipset. If I were you, I would go for another phone. Of course, that's not Fairphone, right? We want to keep to make sure that the people, the users, could keep their phone longer. So we had to find some solutions to some workarounds that's really hacking to do those Android upgrades without the support of the chipset vendor. The good thing is it tends to be a bit better now. They have a special Qualcomm, I mean, they have a special roadmap with LTS long-term support solutions. But yeah, still, that's a niche of the niche, and for a major party of the chipset, it's not the case. And recently, yeah, we roll out Android 10 on Fairphone 2, which will bring Fairphone 2 towards 7.5 years of support, which is quite unique. So I spoke about, if I come back on the agenda, I spoke about the extraction, I spoke about the assembly line, I spoke about the usage, how we can make the phone last longer, how we can increase the usage of the phone from a consumer perspective. And then I will pick up a bit the topic of the recycling. And I would like, yeah, I really want to speak about this aspect because you have a lot of advertisement about how recycling is cool and how it is a good solution to fight the climate change, etc. Bon. Recycling is okay, but that's one solution, the last solution, right? If I speak about a mobile, that's the last solution you have to find a way to optimize the lifespan of the phone, or at least to some components. But the first thing that you should do is to keep your phone. Because the problem with the recycling approach is it can push the consumerism aspect, right? So you can feel less guilty if you recycle your phone. Potentially you have a small voucher and you can buy a new one. And the key, as I said, the key thing is to keep your phone, because recycling, this is what I will explain now, is quite difficult in the mobile industry. It's difficult. The first thing is the take back of the phones is not easy, or is almost not done. In Europe, for example, 700 million phones are still in the drawers. That's more or less 3 times the annual smartphone sales in Europe. So that's crazy. And if we look at the way that we can track the end of life of the phone, when we sell a phone, we create potentially future electronic waste, what we call e-waste, which finally ends up here. So it could be for 8%, the end of life could be the household bin, right? This is what we estimate. More than 44% is more or less unknown. We don't know. We cannot track that. 20%, that's more or less illegal recycling. I will speak about that later. And for 70%, you know that it could be properly recycled. What we do at Fairphone, so when a Fairphone 4 is sold, we want to take back at least one phone, and not especially a Fairphone, by the way. So either via the direct sale channel or via the indirect sale partner channel, we want to balance what we sell, and what we take back. We have a recycling program in Ghana. So because it's quite difficult, I will explain that just in the slide after, but it's quite difficult to clean up the supply chain of recycling. So right now, we are still under the constraint of doing the recycling steps in Europe. So we have some take back program in Ghana to ship the phone to Europe. to do the recycling, which is not super perfect because the transportation cost of the fund is not all. So recycling, the informal recycling, so the 20% that I was mentioning just before, what does it mean? It means that you have a lot of environmental and social impacts on the supply chain. We are speaking about water and ground pollution, toxic emission, health hazard, child labor, etc. So that's a picture from Aboglushi next to Ghana. So yeah, this place is supposed to be closed, but it's still ongoing. And that's one of the main places around the world focusing on e-waste. And it's not done in the proper way because a lot of people, a lot of workers there are burning the cables to get off the plastic and to take the copper. And it means that you have a lot of toxic emissions, which causes a lot of health damages for them. And you have a lot of kids also, a lot of kids working on this kind of super bad conditions. And the kids are mostly focusing on taking the small amount of copper. And at the end of the day, they can have a small amount that they can sell to some resellers. So what we try to do at Fairphone is to push people to recycle their phone. So we have a recycling program, and even if it's at a Fairphone, you can send to us your phone, and we try to estimate a bit the phone, and then you can have some money back. It won't be a lot if you have an old phone, but it could be quite a lot if you have a recent phone. So it can be an incentive for you, for the end users, to push you for the recycling. So that's still good because as I was mentioning at the beginning of the presentation, you have more than 300 million of phones sleeping in the drawers in Europe. This is a picture of the Ghana program that we have with an association there. So you have those kind of containers which leave the Ghana to go to Europe. And in Europe, we are working with Closing the Loop with a company focusing on recycling, official recycling. As I was mentioning, one key point is to keep in mind is that it's better to keep your phone, to repair your phone, rather than just recycling it, because recycling is difficult. We do have some urban mining programs, as I was mentioning, as you know, at the beginning of the talk. So some minerals we are working on, we try to recover those minerals from e-waste, but that's quite difficult. And for some minerals, it's almost impossible, like the neodymium. It's super because the quantity of neodymium in the phone is so small that it's super difficult to recover this mineral from e-waste. So I like this campaign from iFixit. iFixit is a company focusing on selling tools, publishing some documentation about how you can repair your stuff at home. Not only your smartphone, but it could be your washing machine or whatever, your laptop. And it was their campaign for the Earth Day last year, Don't Recycle. And the second picture was repair it, because really the repairability is key. You have a lot of campaigns in Europe, the repair movement, etc., which is increasing the awareness about repairability, but I really want to highlight that today towards you guys. Okay, so I finished a bit the life cycle of the phone, right? I spoke about extraction, the assembly, the usage, and then the disposal of the phones. And now I will quickly touch the governance of Fairphone, how we manage to control our company. And I will speak about something that seems to be perhaps boring, but it is not, what we call the KPIs, the key performance indicators. And it's good for you to know that you have those kind of company who are not focusing only on the rentability, the financial success of the company, but also on really some impact KPI. So our theory of change is to follow those steps. We want to raise awareness, we want to set an example, and then we want to motivate the industry to change. Our mission is to set an example via selling, building a fund. And we want to show our competitors that it is possible to produce such electronics, fair electronics more ethically produced and to be still commercially successful. So this big slide, don't be afraid, but this big slide is just a summary of the KPI that we do have. And it follows a bit the theory of change that I was presenting just before. So the KPI 1 and the KPI 6 is more or less focusing on one of the steps of the theory of change. So we want to establish a market. So we need to sell some fun, because if we don't sell fun, we cannot be sustainable. We cannot survive, more or less. So we need to sell fun. That's the financial KPI, the non-exotic KPI, the one that you can see in a lot of corporates, right? So we are measuring the number of funds that we sell. Since the beginning of Fairphone, we have sold 400K funds, all models included. And we want to motivate the industry to change. What does it mean? KPI 6. It means that we are measuring the industry players who are following our programs. So, for example, recently we launched the Fair Cobalt Alliance in Congo, and some big companies joined this program, like Volvo, Tesla, Google Pixel. And for us, it's good because it means that the sourcing, the fair sourcing chain that we created will be used by bigger players, because we have to be realistic, right? With the volume needed for Fairphone, for the 400K funds that I mentioned just before, we won't solve the issues for the people living in the Congo, right? So we need bigger volumes of cobalt, bought by companies like Tesla, Volvo, Google Pixel, to make the fair, sustainable sourcing sustainable. So this is why it's key for the programs that we launched, and it's key to make sure that we can really change the industry from the inside out. So that's something that we can measure. And the other KPI are more focused on the impact aspect. So we have, you know, I was presenting the life cycle of the product. I started with the extraction. So that's a matter of having a fair sourcing supply chain for the minerals that you use. That's the KPI 4. We measure the average percentage of focused material sustainability sourced. We have also the good working conditions. So, you know, the people in the mine, but also the people in the factory. We really want to improve their working condition, and we measure the number of the number of people that can have the benefit of the programs that we are launching. So that's the KPI 5, number of people benefiting from the Fairphone programs. And then we have the circularity, so the recycling aspect. We are measuring the number of funds recovered versus sold. And we want to find this balance, as I was mentioning just before. And of course, we are measuring the longevity. So that's the step number 3 of the life cycle, the usage. So if in the end, we realize that our users are keeping their phone 1 year, it means that we failed somewhere, right? So we are actively tracking the duration of the usage of the phone to make sure that people are really using their phone longer. So that's more or less the KPI. And KPI 2 and 3, yeah, that's one of the main ones that we are following on a more regular basis. Sorry. All those goals are following 9 of the Sustainable Development Goals, right? So no poverty, quality education, gender equality, that's more or less related to the fair mining, decent work and economic growth, industry innovation and infrastructure, responsible consumption and production, reduce inequalities, climate action, and partnership for the goals. Every year we are publishing the impact report of each of the previous year. So we are open sourcing the KPI that we have, and we are open sourcing also that we are openly publishing where we are, if we succeed or not for each KPI. So for example, in 2020, mostly because of Corona, by the way, we sold less funds than expected. But we had more people benefiting from the Fairphone social intervention, right? So I won't go deeper into that, but you know that we have a full impact report available online, and you will have all the details. What we are used to say is, yeah, if you think you are too small, that's a quote that we used from someone else. I don't remember the name of this quote by the way, but the quote is, I like it. It means that even if you are small, you can still have some impact. If you think that you are too small to make a difference, try to sleep in a closed room with a mosquito. And it means that, yeah, at Fairphone, we are just 100 employees. So it's super small compared to Samsung, Apple, or whatever. But we are still thinking that it could make the difference between what was the industry, the electronic industry in 2010 and what could be the industry in 2030. We really think that that's a game where we cannot be alone. So we need to partner with both the consumers and the suppliers to make it happen. And yeah, every day is a new. We have a new challenge every day, literally. We have to work on our resilience, etc. But we really think that yeah, it's worth trying to do it, and not focusing only on the financial balance of the company is quite needed. So this is why I really wanted to insist on the fair KPI, to also inspire you if at one point you will be part of a company with potentially a social goal or whatever. It would be great to measure it properly and part of the key performance indicator of your company. And then I guess that we are reaching the end of this talk. And yeah, as I was mentioning, the duration of this talk is a bit more than 1 hour, just to make sure that we can keep some time to discuss. If you have questions. So I will stop sharing my screen and I will take your questions. Yeah. I didn't have a look on the chat, by the way, because of course I was showing my presentation. So could you say again the name of the German? I think that's the Wuppertal Institute. If I'm not mistaken, let me check. Yeah, Wuppertal Institute. Up, and this notation, the MIPS, was promoted by the Wuppertal Institute like 30 years ago. It's not new. No, that's not the number of types of materials. That's based on the weight of the resources, all combined. This is what we call this is the metaphor that they used is the ecological backpack. So more or less, if you have a small product, right, like that, think about the backpack that you needed to build this kind of product. All the resources that were involved into the production of this product. I'm not only measuring the green gas emissions or the carbon footprint that happen during the usage of the product, or perhaps the production. And then have some big companies proposed to buy. What is the question, Asser? The question is, did we have some proposals from other companies
exactly.
to be okay to acquire Fairphone? Okay, thanks. No, and the thing is, I'm not sure if we will say yes. That's the advantage of being independent. So we don't have a lot of investors. We don't have, we don't have. We want to keep the control on the company. We really want to avoid to have big investors having a major part of the capital, because hey, let's say that at one point one of them could say, hey, you think with the Chinese workers, it's not bankable. We cannot have a label on that like fair trade. So hey, let's keep it for a while and let's see what we can do. Let's see how we can be focused only on those key areas and not the other ones. It took me some time to present to you all the key impact areas. So on one hand, you can say, yeah, that's good. But on the other hand, you can say, oh, that's quite diverse. They are perhaps losing their focus. No, we are really thinking that we cannot make a sustainable fund, a fair fund, if we are not focusing on each steps of the life cycle. So this is why we want to keep this focus. But having more investors could be tricky because they can tell us to skip one. Instead of 3, you mean? Make that sense? Yeah, for sure. I mean, of course. If I look at the sales channels that we have and their changes for the last 20 years, 10 years, I would say. At the beginning, we were really focusing using the direct sales channel. So we were selling our phone directly via our web shop. So direct sales without using the B2B channel, the indirect sales channel. But now more and more, we are selling our phones via the B2B channel. Why? Because for some companies, it's good because it helps them to check the box of sustainability, CSR, etc. And also, it could be on the cost side, it could be more efficient because thanks to a Fairphone or other brand, which are doing more or less the same. I was mentioning Artesi or Crosscall. If you can have a solution to keep your phone 4 years, right? So if as a company, you can give this fund to your employees and repair it easily, it's good, right? Because you won't have to renew the fleet of your funds every 2 or 4 or 3 years. So this is why I think now we had this pivot more or less between direct sales and indirect sales. So of course it makes sense. It makes sense to push the companies, the corporates, to change the habits of the users. And more generally speaking, those individual behavior really impacts. Yeah, that's key. Huh? I mean, the behaviors of companies, of course, did have an impact. Does have an impact, but also the behavior of the consumers. I mean, if you manage to be less under the influence of the aesthetical obsolescence, for example, the fact that I really wanted to have this new iPhone, or I really want to have a new fancy camera. Yeah, of course, camera is key. If at one point you think that you do bad pictures with your phone, it's not good. But on the other hand, yeah, is it key for the world to have always every year a new camera? And by the way, I didn't mention that, but on a Fairphone, you can change some parts, right? If you break some of them, but you can also have hardware upgrades. So for example, for this phone, after 1 year, we roll out a new camera, the rear camera and the main camera, for the people who really, really want to have a new camera. So if you change just this module, you don't have to change the whole phone. So we do also, we did that also with Fairphone 2. We do also some hardware upgrades, especially for the camera, because we know that people are quite focused on that. But the behaviors of the consumers is key, because if you manage to convince yourself to keep your phone longer, then you you are on your way to reduce e-waste. As I was mentioning, the longer you use your phone, the better it is, because one of the critical paths of the phone lifespan is the production. 80% of the green gas emissions of the whole lifespan of the phone are done during the production of the phone. So the less you produce the phone, the better it is. Do you have more questions?
I can have a question here. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's really interesting. So you said that Fairphone launched with very few people, and now you have about 100 workers. What part of the hardware do you have? I understood that you work with Chinese manufacturers like Qualcomm, for example. Do you do only the design of the full phone, and you buy every chips that are already in the market, or do you also design the chip and you just ask for printing and then integrate it in your? I don't know if I'm clear, but yeah.
So yeah, you are clear, completely clear. Yeah, so we are designing everything ourselves because you don't have any modular phone in the market, right? So when you open a Fairphone, as I was mentioning, you can easily, you have some small screws, screws, and you can easily take off some modules, right? But the design of the modules and the components within those modules are done by Fairphone. But having said that, we have some exception, and the battery also is designed by us. So the battery is completely easily removable. It's not, you don't have any glue like in a lot of phones. But behind the battery, you have the chipset. You don't see it now, but you have the chipset. And this chipset, the processor, is not at all open. I mean, you have two monopolies, and Fairphone or Samsung, that becomes a bit, it's a bit different because they try to do it now themselves. But a majority of the Android phone, are using a Qualcomm chipset or a MediaTek chipset. So the small brain of the phone is done by two monopolies, MediaTek and Qualcomm. For Apple, they are using their own chipset because they are designing their own chipset. For the Android phones, it's not the case. You are always depending on the two monopolies that I was mentioning. Even for Apple, they used some Qualcomm pieces for the chipset. So for the chipset, no, we are not using our own chipset, and we won't have the bandwidth, the resources to build our own chipset, because that's huge, in terms of complexity. When I was doing the presentation, I was showing at one point this slide with the chipset. Yeah, this one. So you see my screen?
Yes.
So this chipset is quite a big chunk of technology, because you have the different GPU, you have all the connectivity on it, You have the camera, you have the camera processor, you know, all the sensor code. Bref, you have everything. So Fairphone or either LG, Sony won't have the capacity, the technical knowledge to do it. So you have to rely on a corporate, a big monopoly like Qualcomm. But for the rest of the components, we are designing them ourselves, and we are working with what we call an ODM. So in the mobile industry, what we call the factory is the ODM. And what does ODM it means original design manufacturer. So once the design is done, you need to give the plan of the PCB, this kind of thing, to the manufacturer who will produce it. But in reality, it's also both way, right? I mean, you have to work closely with them to do the design, because if on the manufacturing step it's not doable, you have to go back to square one and to redo everything. So when we design the phone, we work closely with them, and we want to stay in China because this is where the bad things happen. If I would say, I mean, sometimes some journalists are asking me why we are not insourcing everything in Europe. And the thing is, the major part of the assembly lines are in China. So if we want to change the industry, we have to be where it's happening.
And so when you think, so you work a lot on reparability.
Right.
But in terms of for the components, is it can you also think about recyclability, or is it like for microelectronics, it's something very impossible?
So we work with modules. So, you know, within a Fairphone, you have modules. A module is a group of components, etc. And what we try to do at the scale of Fairphone is when someone is recycling its own Fairphone, we take back this Fairphone and we try to dismantle it to reuse the modules, right? So that's the first step that we do. And then when it's not doable, everything is completely broken, let's say. Of course, we try to reuse the components of this module within another phone, which is not a Fairphone, and it's not us. It's done by a partner that we have in France, by the way, called Cadaoz, C-A-D-A-O-Z, if I'm not wrong. And this partner is specialized. It's like a small back market, but just specialized is the reconditioning of the phone, etc. So they buy some refurbished phones and they try to make new phones, to repair some some phones. So this knowledge is not in-house, but we have a partner doing it. And then when it's not doable at the scale of the component, then you have to see if this broken component, you can reuse the tungsten in it. And this is what we call the urban mining. You have the virgin mining when you extract minerals from the earth, right, from the mines, in Africa, in Asia, wherever you want. And you have the urban mining when you try to extract some minerals from the e-waste, from a broken component. And it's doable. We have, for example, materials we are focusing on the tin. But the urban mining, that's quite new. It's difficult technically to extract those minerals. That's expensive. Sometimes it's on some phones, it's not the Fairphone, but on other brand, everything is glued. So you cannot dismantle the phone. Otherwise, I mean, it takes time, long amount of time to dismantle it because, yeah, by design, it's not doable. And then at one point when you managed, let's say, to dismantle it completely, when you have a component, it's difficult sometimes from a physical perspective to reuse the component, like the neodymium, because the quantity are so small that it's super difficult to recovering everything. Does it answer your question?
Yes. So now you focus mostly on tungsten, which is maybe the easier.
I can show you because I go a bit quickly on that. Alors, if I go, this is in our impact report, by the way.
Okay.
Voilà. So we have 8 materials we are focusing on for the urban mining: tin, copper, raw earth, plastic, nickel, magnesium, indium, zinc, and aluminium. Voilà.
Okay, and compared to the others in the market, so did you have to implement special technologies so it can be so these components can be extracted, or they can do the same with all the phones?
No, we don't have to. I mean, the technology, we are not doing any R&D on that,
Okay.
research and development on that. We are using really the standards of the industry because, 100 employees, we cannot be everywhere. So on that, zero R&D, we are using the basics, the standards, the norms, but you don't have a lot of things on that. So we cannot explore that. But once it's there, we really try to use the tools available, the methodology available. So we know that for the tin, it's quite easier now, right, to extract it from the e-waste. So this is why we are investing a lot of stuff on that. And we try to improve to support the current research. We launched a research program on that, but not on the technical side, more on the supply chain side, more or less, using the technology which are already existing, but just trying to put in contact the traders who are used to work with the virgin mining with the partners who are doing the urban mining. That's okay? Does it answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. So I have Andrea also. Do you also have a program thinking about a new engineering? Ouais, alors, yeah.
Yeah, just to, hello.
Yeah, Andrea, go ahead.
Yeah, just to complete the question I wrote, I was mainly thinking about maybe there are some features in the phone that need specific materials and not all users need those features. So if you thought about how to adapt and try to reduce for some users that not need all the power or all the features of the phone by reducing the use of some materials. Thank you.
Yeah. So I will answer with 2 angles. The first one is, let's say that we are not reducing the number of features of a phone, right? Let's say that we are using the same features as all the phones have, right? You can still be a bit smart in terms of minerals that you can use for this usage of this feature. So for example, for it was for what? I have forgotten. For the audio, but I don't remember which part of the audio. We changed, so we are not using tantalum anymore. The tantal. We are not using it because tantalum is part of the 3G of the conflict minerals. So we skipped the tantalum and we changed it with some ceramic, which are less difficult in terms of conflict. So that's one thing that we do. Again, no R&D on that. It's just the thing that we try to explore for one component. We know that some suppliers are using ceramic instead of tantalum on that. So, okay, let's go for it, right? Voilà, first approach, which is a good approach, I think so, because you can reduce a bit the number of challenging minerals that you have. And then in terms of features, can we skip some features? No, we have one. We would. It could be a good approach, but this is not Fairphone is doing. What Fairphone is doing, because the thing is, we try to do a standard phone, right? A standard smartphone, sorry, not a feature phone. Feature phone meaning a dumb phone, you know. So we launched a standard phone every 2 years to cope with the basic needs of a lot of users, right? So if, I mean, this idea is good, but that's for a niche of people, I guess, right? And I personally, that's funny because when I started working at Fairphone, it was crazy. I don't remember, I think I had a Google Pixel. So, you know, the first day at Fairphone, they gave me a Fairphone. I was like, yeah, nice. But I looked at around me and half of the employees had a dumb phone, you know, was kind of super, and I like it, right? In the end, I think it's better for a lot of aspects, not only for the planet, but also for the addiction, etc. There are plenty of reasons to invest on that, on doing something in between a smartphone and a dumb phone. I think so. But that's not for us, but for another project. Because at one point we need, as I said, the DNA, the culture, the essence of Fairphone. And if you look at the history of Fairphone, is really focusing on conflict minerals, this kind of thing, having more fair sourcing materials, etc. So we want to build a phone to show that it's doable. And to do that, we need to cope with the standard needs or the most used features in the phone. So if we reduce too much features, I think we will lose a lot of people. That's if I'm honest, this is what I can say. But it was funny because we had a team outing recently with the management team, all the head of and etc. And we had to think about the future of Fairphone. What do we have to do? Do we have to, I don't know, do another project like Fair laptop, right? And I mean, I'm not saying a lot because everything is completely unclear right now for the roadmap of Fairphone. But one of the main ideas from the employees at Fairphone was to do a feature phone, a dumb phone. But not doing a smartphone with less features, really doing a feature phone. So I think it's a good idea. And then also on that, I think that recently, I will try to to put that in the link. That one of my colleagues sent to me a brilliant crowdfunding campaign. It is about TerraCube. TerraCube is one of the competitor, but we like them. Do you know TerraCube? No.
No.
I think it's a good product to look at it in the mobile industry. I will share my screen with you again. Voilà. So he sent to me that. So this is, so it seems to be a bit scary because this is a fun for kids. Okay. So, on the other hand, I have some kids, and one of them is turned 9 this weekend, and I can tell you that when your kids are 10, 11, 12, that's the case for my son. He's almost that's not completely true, but a lot of kids in the classroom have a phone already, right? So, okay, I will try to manage to avoid to buy a phone to my son for the next years. But okay, if at one point I need to buy a phone, it's not completely a bad idea to have a phone with less features. This is what you were mentioning. And TerraCube is a company who is focusing on also building a sustainable phone. And they launched their campaign So they are from the US. Huh? You have to know that the US culture is not the European culture. Huh? In the US, all the kids at 8 have a phone almost, even the poor population, etc. That's completely crazy. And they launched this phone, and that's more or less, you know, the idea that you mentioned, and potentially for adults, right? I mean, I would like to have this phone myself to be less addicted, etc. So I think it could be doable, right? To have a phone with less features, etc. But that's not for Fairphone. We want to invest. Perhaps I'm wrong, and in the end, we will do it in 3 years. We will think that it could be less good to have a phone with less features. But for now, we don't do it. I will put the campaign if you are interested into it. Because I think not for the kids, but for the adults, it could be a niche. What they do là, TerraCube. And TerraCube, by the way, is a good company to follow because they launched their phone a few years ago, quite recently. And they have, like us, you know, a 5 years warranty. For them, it's not 5, it's perhaps 4. A 4 years warranty phone, etc. So that's a good brand. I put their website in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Then I had some questions. I will go with the last one. Are you in a dynamic of growth? Alors, Claire Antoine, are you in a dynamic of growth? So what I say quite often is we are promoting the slow growth approach. So yeah, that's not at all. We are not aiming for being unicorns, right? For sure, but we need to grow at one point because we need to, you know, having more fair minerals in our phone, so we need to grow. But we do think that it is easily to grow slowly compared to growing quickly, because growing quickly means, as I said at the beginning, means that you have to find some investors. And if you have too much investors, you lose control. That's easy to understand. So we are really promoting slow growth. And, you know, we don't want to launch a fund every year. We want to take the time to learn from the failures that we had, because we had so many failures. Huh? I mean, on Fairphone 2, for example, the technical aspect of Fairphone 2 are a bit difficult. I mean, the modularity, it was the first modular phone, but the modularity was not completely good. So we learned from that, and we launched Fairphone 3 based on all the lessons learned from Fairphone 2. So we need time, right? So no, we are not in a dynamic of growth, of quick growth, I would say. We are in a dynamic of growth, but slow growth. Then, where can we check the list? Alors, conflict mineral, sorry, officially from the. Is it from the? I don't know. By the way, that's a good question. I don't remember where the list is from. I think this is from the UN. I will check, but the number of officially, the number of conflict minerals is 4: tin, tungsten, tantal, and gold. Officially, you have only 4 conflict minerals, but that's the theory. But in practice, you have more. We do think that the cobalt, the copper, are also minerals which cause a lot of conflicts in some, where you have a lot of people with some weapons in the streets of some villages in Congo, etc. But officially, you have only 4. And from who is defining this list? I don't remember, by the way. I will check. But that's for a worldwide organization, I would say. Yeah? Check. Conflict. UN. I was right. The UN General Assembly. I will put the link into the the chat. Bam. Are you working on the usage side, inventing new imaginaries to be less dependent on? So we have this question quite often by our customers, like quite often. So the answer is no, because as I said, I think we have plenty of areas, right? From my perspective, it's good to have all those areas, key areas to focus on, but that's a lot. Huh? Fair materials, good working condition in the factory, long-lasting design, the disposal step. So that's a lot for us. So we are not touching the software. We are using what we call stock Android. So we are not working on having a software with less addiction, etc. But having said that, we are partnering with EOS. So you can buy a Fairphone with EOS directly flashed with it. So EOS is an operating system, an open source operating system, which is focusing on having a privacy focused OS. So I will send to you the link. So it's, I mean, this OS, of course, doesn't have any GMS, Google Mobile Services. So you don't have YouTube, you don't have Gmail, you don't have Maps, etc. So it comes with a super small amount of apps, like just a messaging client, Maps app, sorry, zero social network app, this kind of thing, right? It's easy to use. You don't have to be a technical expert to use it, etc. But it's not really something to really avoid the usage of social network or this kind of thing. So the brand was renamed recently. That's called Murena, but the name of the OS is E. And we have a partnership with them. So if you go on their website, you can buy a Fairphone with E on it. But that's more focused on privacy, and you don't have any Google tracker. So that's good. And you don't have any, like GMS installed by default, Google Mobile Services. For example, for my son, the one I was speaking just before, that's crazy, because if you look at, okay, let's say that in 1 or 2 years, I want to give him a phone. I mean, I would like to avoid to have YouTube by default. And the thing is, if you buy an Android phone, you cannot escape YouTube. That's the thing, because YouTube is installed by default on each Android phone, because that's part of the GMS, the Google Mobile Services. And when you ship an Android phone as a manufacturer, you have a license with Google, and you are obliged to ship the GMS on it. That's horrible, huh? But this is how they look to their users.
I have a question about, yes, the alternative OS that you can flash
EOS.
on. Yeah, the E Foundation. Does it impact the durability of the phone?
Alors, yes, the thing is, EOS, I will show you, is running not only Fairphone, huh? It's running on more than, if I'm not mistaken, on more than 200 devices. And because that's a Google free Android, not a certified Android, if you have an old Samsung, you go to the EOS supported devices, and you have a high chance to see your old Samsung part of this list. And it means that even if your Samsung is 5 years old, you can use their OS, their EOS, after those 5 years, because they are still rolling out the new security patches of EOS, and then you will be able to use your favorite app like TikTok and Snapchat. And I'm kidding, but that's part of the app who have a super short lifespan. So thanks to EOS, you have this long-lasting software running on it. So that means that you still have the security patches, and it will avoid you the situation where some apps will stop running. So, you know, to have a long-lasting software, you have two options: doing what we do at Fairphone, stock Android, fighting monopolies, blah, blah. We try to have some workaround to have a stock Android, so a certified Android with the GMS and whatever. Running on an old chipset. After 7 years, you still have Android upgrades, right? That's the first option. The second option is to escape Android, the certified Android, and to have an alternative software running on it, like E. And with E, you still have security patches, Android upgrades, even if your phone is old.
And what is the business model of EOS? Because it's free to get all the their software.
So you can buy a Murena smartphone with E. This is their model. So if I share my screen with you again, voila. So if you go to their website, you can download and use it for free, right? On those 200 devices, and perhaps I'm wrong, by the way. Let's see. I see 240. Okay, so it's even more. So, you know, you can use it for free. You can go to this list and you can check if, okay, your smartphone is part of it, right? Or you can buy a smartphone with EOS on it, because they are buying some Fairphone. So that's, you know, one of the partner of E. So you can buy a Fairphone 4, a Fairphone 3, but you can also buy a refurbished phone. So they have the Galaxy S9, they have all the stuff, Note 4G, Galaxy, TerraCube, and they have TerraCube, even better. So voilà, this is their business model. Does it answer your question?
Yes. So if I understand well, with the Android on your phone, after a few years, you cannot download some apps. So there is kind of obsolescence, but using EOS, you can update and still use your old phone with the new apps.
Exactly.
Okay.
So by heart, I don't know, but let's say that you have a Samsung or an Asus, right? I get for each for each model, I cannot say by heart if it's still maintained by the manufacturer. But let's say that this Asus phone was released in 2000. I think this one is still maintained, but this one is not maintained for sure. 2016, I think they finished the manufacturer, so Asus, went end of life, I think in 2018 or 19, I would say. And then thanks to E, you can still use it. So you have to install yourself the software, right, on it. But once it is installed, you are quiet. So yeah, that's it. And of course, you know, for the Fairphone, you can go to their web shop to buy a phone directly with their software, with their OS. And for the other one, you have to flash it yourself. But they developed something easy to use, what they call the quick installer. It's super easy. I have one neighbor who uses it. He's not technical. His job is to repair some bike. So he's not on the digital industry, but he managed to install it. Is it clear? They have a OnePlus also. The Nord one, indeed.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Do I have more questions? Nope. Ah, si.
But
Ah, non. Non, pardon.
maybe something more to take a step back on the phone industry. What is the future of phone industry? What are the technologies that will take over on the market, and how do you see it? And because we saw that the sales had reached a kind of stability. You said like 1.5 billion per year.
Yeah.
Like, will it continue to be stable, and in terms of technology breakout also?
Unfortunately, I think it will grow a bit still because we had the corona effect, but I think it will grow a bit still. The issue is we go sometimes to the MWC, so the Mobile World Congress with all the manufacturers, etc., selling their new brand phone, etc., shiny new phone. The thing is, every year you have a new technology. So 2 years ago, it was a foldable phone, which is, I mean, from my perspective, there is no interest advantage to do it. It's even, you know, it could be less robust. I mean, you have a lot of weaknesses with the foldable phone, by the way. But yeah, so every year you have other technologies that the manufacturers try to sell as needed or amazing or shiny or whatever. I would like to have more fair spec, right? I would like to have this MWC with full of manufacturers saying, hey, you know what, with this phone, you have the warranty that Chinese workers are well paid, etc. So we are really pushing to do that. It's a bit, you can see it as a naive approach, but this is what we think could be the good way of innovation, because what we call innovation is innovation should not be only technical. We would like to have social innovation part of those kind of mobile congress. Yeah, that's an obvious answer. And then if you really want to have my vision on the technical innovation, yeah, potentially on the chipset would be great to have a modular chipset. Would be great to have a repairable chipset. Again, a lot of technical innovation could cover this the longevity. The battery would be great to have more long-lasting battery, because the battery is key. Modularity. We are the only one in the market doing innovate technique, because that's technical, right? And we are the only one in the market to do modularity. And I would like to have more actors involved into modularity. I'm part of the French government work group to define the index of durability. So finally, Fairphone was accepted. We were not part of the index of repairability definition, but finally the French government accepted to have our application to define with other partners, the French government, but also other manufacturers like Samsung, Apple, etc., to define the index of durability. And that's crazy. I mean, you cannot imagine the discussion that we have. You know, I won't quote some manufacturer, but on Friday I had a long discussion with this French government group to define the index of durability. And one of the manufacturers was saying in front of the French government and all the people involved in this work group, yeah, you know what? Design integration is key. When your device is super well integrated with one piece, it's robust and that's long lasting. And I was like, what the fuck, guys? I mean, you can break your screen, and if you cannot change your screen, if you are locked, then you have to change it. Yeah, I know, but we have some numbers to show that when everything is locked, this is better. I mean, that's completely bullshit. So I would like to have independent studies, right, to show that potentially modularity or something else could increase the lifespan of the phone. So to have independent researches on repairability, on long-lasting design, this kind of thing, to avoid this kind of situation where it was more or less manufacturer X fighting Fairphone and vice versa. Other questions? Nope. Okay.
Yes, I have one last question.
Yes.
About the criticity of minerals, you know, like the geological disponibility. Is it something that you're studying?
Yes. Let me check if I have something on my slide deck. Tuck.
And also, if I can add to the question, because we understood that there is a lot of problems on the supply chain of chips due to manufacturers in Korea, in China, and are these only related to industrial problems or also to mineral
yeah,
I mean, supply problems.
Okay, so yeah, I got it. So to answer the last one, no, it's not related at all to the minerals. The chipset industry is closed, full of patents. So this, and the complexity is crazy, the technical complexity. So this is why it's super difficult to tackle it, right? So you more or less you have to use Qualcomm or MediaTek. You don't have the choice. There is one exception called. You see my screen? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Called merde, comment il s'appelle? Purism. So Purism is a US company, and those guys are crazy. That's I like them so much. So of course they are building, you know, a bit like E. So they're not only building smartphone, by the way, they are building also laptop. But on their phone, they want to they are promoting the open hardware aspect, and they use a chipset from the aeronautic sector, because by default, by definition, in the aeronautic sector, of course, the chipsets are long lasting. So they are trying to do that, and they are open sourcing the PCB board, etc. So what they do is quite nice. But yeah, I mean, that's the only one doing that. For the rest, I mean, or the Android ecosystem or the non-Apple ecosystem, everybody is using the chipset from the monopoly because of the technical complexity. Okay. And then on our side, so this is a presentation that I've done for the CNRS recently, because they were only interested into the supply chain aspect and the criticality. I will share with you this white paper, this report that we have done. I will share it with you because it explains a bit what we are using. Sorry. Yeah. So if you open this document, the one that I shared in the chat, you will see how we use the calculation, how we choose to focus on this mineral and not this one. And it's based on, of course, the criticality, but not only. So if you go now, so we try to balance the choice based on the electronic demands, the criticality to functionality of smartphones, to have yeah, some features on the smartphone. To see if we will need that in the roadmap, and in our roadmap, sorry. And recently, of course, we added all the criteria. We added the demand growth, the general demand growth in the electronic industry, the depletion, and the virgin material consumption. So for each mineral, we do that. So that just, you know, you will see that in the report that I sent to you in the chat. Huh? Okay. For each mineral, we did it. So we did the analysis, and then in the end, we tried to balance a bit those criteria to choose the minerals that we will be focused on. In addition to our own criteria, right? Environmental challenges, social challenges, and weak governance structures. And based on that, we were deciding to focus on some of them. And that's analysis was done on, more or less all the smartphone all the minerals that you see on our phones, the 56 mineral materials. So this is the research that we have done.
Thank you.
Is it clear? Does it answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so it's 5.
Yes, we have another course at 5. So thank you very much.
Thank you
very much. Very interesting.
Cool.
Very
We keep
interesting.
in touch. We keep in touch. If you need my email, I will type it here. Okay. Enjoy.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Very much. Bye.
Bye. Ciao, ciao.